right off the bat. Screw you, skunk. I'd call you the less pleasant name for a female dog, because you are, but you've made your biology explicitly clear, in more disgusting ways than one. Now you're probably thinking, oh, but what could a precious doggo do to deserve such slander? It's best if I let his actions speak for themselves. 2 Fridays ago, after arriving home from a particularly coma-inducing workday, I stepped onto my porch and slipped and flung my laptop bag over into the step, leaving it with a nice hearty green line on the screen. What a surprise when I looked down to see a steaming fresh dog turd smeared across my shoes and pant legs. Still half composed in that archetypal spiral so infuriatingly perfect it bordered self-parody. I was beyond bad-mouthing neighbours and passers-by. I knew what this was. With a sneer, I turned slowly to look back across the street, through the poster-smothered glass of a derelict convenience store. I could clearly make out a silhouette. A silhouette with swollen, pointy ears bobbing up and down in glee. Frankly, I'd gone beyond the point of having enough. I shot to my feet and paced into the road with no regard for lefts or rights. I needed to have a word with Skunk, and by that, I mean pound his skull flat enough to be used as a hubcap. Just as I set foot on the opposite pavement, he darted away, retreating into the shadows and out of sight. Aside from the obvious, something about that mutt really pisses me off. It's in those eyes. Something cold and bitter beneath the dumb innocence nobody else seems able to see past. Yeah, I've got a bone or two to pick with you, Skunk, and none for you to chew. You've been the sole focus of my wrath ever since I walked in 3 weeks back on a substandard Monday morning, when my immediate arrival was heralded by the motivational speech of, "I'm going to drown your mother in shit, whore bastard." Work's been worse than hell ever since I spun around to see those ugly, swaying jowls on a head not too dissimilar to the arse cushion of a morbidly obese live streamer. Those moist red lids, framing eyes, staring with unwarranted scorn. I looked around at my co-workers in disbelief. Had they not heard it? Why is there a dog in the office? Herbert, a woefully incompetent sales manager, cocked his head and made his way over to me. "Good morning, William. This little guy here is Skunk." I waited, expecting him to elaborate. "Why?" "Hey, slow down. I'm getting to it." Kind of rude, but okay. "He's the, how do I put it? He's for employee morale, to keep your spirit up." I scoffed, glancing between Herbert and the flabby pile of wrinkles sitting on a wheelie chair. I don't know how to tell you this. Actually, I do. Why in God's name would I want a son of a bitch in here staring at me all day? I mean, come on. Half the paperwork's going to be sodden with dog slobber. Herbert glowered at me, but held his tongue. "What? Don't look at me like that, Bert. Skunk over there, stupid name by the way, just called me a whore bastard." He snorted at me, turning away with sarcastic dismissal. "Watch your step, Bill. Skunk's always watching." The mere existence of his name irked me. Who calls a dog Skunk? I asked around, and no one seemed to know. In fact, no one could even tell me who brought him in here. He stays on that dumb chair from 8 till 5. Really, I haven't seen him move at all. During work hours, at least. I managed to filter out his presence while drumming away on my keyboard. I thought it'd be enough. Obviously it wasn't, because at noon a few days later, I opened my lunchbox to see it brimming with dry dog food. Contorting my face into as piercing a scowl as I could manage, I slowly raised my head to look at Skunk through the plexiglass. I swear, that mutt could have been a statue or a wax model. Sometimes I could only tell he was real by the mélange of sweaty hair and dog farts. Somehow, that just pissed me off even more. Flaring my nostrils, I growled, What a scrumptious-looking sandwich I have today." When I looked back down, A nigh demonic, howling guffaw erupted from Skunk's general direction. Instead of giving him the satisfaction of shooting up from my chair in outrage, I rolled out from the stall and trundled around, so I was right in front of him. I then began to eat the dog biscuits, all the while staring into those deep, wet eyeballs, emphasizing every dry crunch. They actually weren't all that bad, just bland. "You really eat this shit, huh? Well, tasteless chow for a tasteless hound, I guess. I'd rather eat dusty cardboard." Skunk wobbled his head lazily from side to side, as if shaking his head in disapproval. Hey, stop that! Your dewlap's making me want to puke." Then a filthy, gurgling voice churned out. "Billiam, Will, I must issue. Ladies puke at the sight of you." Oh, did I mention? If the presence of this shithead alone wasn't enough, he preferred to speak in cheesy, tantalizing rhymes. I'd criticize him, but that would only be feedback for improvement. And I didn't want that. Yep, fuck right off. You know, I was thinking about something earlier today. Would you happen to have any Asian heritage? Indian, perchance? Skunk cocked his head at me. It just occurred to me that you might be related to doles. You know, those wild fox dog things that live over there. Yeah, because you're a d-hole. Is that funny, Skunk? Do you concur? I swear, he rolled his eyes at me and huffed. Exceptionally poor, William. Exceptionally flawed. I'll be speaking of this to Jennifer. Your new goal is to be droll, for your peers would agree. You are best fit for sticking on a rectum pole. All told, you are good for nothing but a jester's role. Where's the rhythm boy? Bad boy? Nah, you know what? I'm tired of this. I don't need a slab of coyote ugly mincemeat like you giving orders. I calmly proceeded to stand and bludgeon Skunk's head with my metal lunchbox. Or, well, I got one good swing in before it was wrenched from my hands, stuck fast to his drooping face by some gooey discharge. Now, with a muffled voice sounding like Satan's toilet after Taco Bell. "Jennifer! Oh, Jennifer! Come sweep away this petulant child, impudent, wild, and ineloquently vile." I'm not sure what it was. His stupid, arrogant tone, the way his flabby skin swayed and bounced, or the stench that could very well have been his namesake. Likely the combination. Whatever it was, a fury sparked in me, hotter and more untamable than I'd ever felt before. I lunged at the mutt, teeth bared and fingers outstretched, but a blow to my stomach sent me reeling face first into the floor. A fellow cubicle inmate leered at me, one not noteworthy enough for me to remember his name. 5 o'clock shadow, below even darker eyebags. "Jennifer wants to speak with you," he said. I went to stand and tackle him, but buckled, still trying to catch the wind knocked out of me. In the meanwhile, 2-3 more employees came over to back him up. In another situation, the way I was hefted up and paraded by several sets of hands would have been a pretty sweet crowd-surfing fiasco. Of course, I was in an office, and there was no music. Straining my eyes upwards, or ahead, I could see Jennifer waiting at her desk, legs crossed and pen topping. My marching parade allowed me to drop unceremoniously onto the carpet, that scraggly nylon stuff that treats you to one bitch of a carpet burn. Jennifer, with those mousy eyes, basically told me I was underperforming. I told her I'd been working on schedule while my co-workers had just been cooing over that fucking dog. When I said that, I could swear her eyes got so cold they were black, and she said, "Our priorities are not something you need to worry about." Priorities? I stifled my fury as best I could, but at that moment I wouldn't have been surprised if steam was jetting out of my ears, much as I wanted to launch Jen from a full-scale trebuchet into a sea of mosquitoes. I needed the income, and a bitter note of dismissal wouldn't fare well for future job interviews. Honestly, I should be given a medal of perseverance, dealing with the shit I've had to. Finn and Jarvis welcomed me into the kitchen last Thursday by sitting on their haunches up on the counter, whooping and flinging what I hope was spoiled milk at me. I watched in revulsion as a girl, a new intern I think, crawled on all fours to an indeterminate location, carrying Skunk on her back like he was some doggone martyr. The general trend seemed clear to me. My co-workers were troglodytes before, so now I don't know what to call them. Gorillafied? Chimpanzulated? Practically no work gets done aside from my own. They don't even seem to talk anymore, just communicate with looks and gestures. Things came to a cop-sheaf yesterday. When I say we skipped a few steps in whatever godforsaken ritual has been going on, I'm under-exaggerating. I'd already made a point of bringing in my own coffee and thermos. Someone shat in the kettle. Don't ask me why, but I saw the cons in that when I laid eyes upon the scene in the office and spilled it straight onto my thighs. The cubicles were disassembled, a term I use very generously, and pushed up against the walls, leaving a wide empty space in the centre. Well, it would have been empty if it weren't for the huddled, twitching mass of employees, all naked and scratched up. I didn't have to look to know who sat in the centre of the congregation, but I looked anyway. Skunk sat there, glaring at me, a deformed mess of bone and flab that I struggled to call a dog. I'd noticed subtle changes over the past weeks, but I didn't even know what to call him at that moment. Well, except ugly. Yeesh! You look positively horrendous! Skunk didn't like that. He let out this bizarre, belting warble, which became evident as a call sign when it was reciprocated by my bare cheek co-workers. They slammed their fists into the floor like enraged primates, which they were, and began to canter or trot towards me in a kind of threatening beast march. I should have been scared. That fire and brimstone rage was back though, and it drowned all else in its flame. Fuck you, Skunk. A hand around my ankle jump-started me into action. I whipped my leg back, dragging Jennifer towards me, and jump-slammed her head with both feet. I was afforded no relief as Herbert sprang from the ground with frog-like propulsion, driving into my shoulder and sending me into a spinning flop across a desk. My hand landed on something smooth, V-shaped, and without pausing to examine it, I swung back around to catch Herbert by his neck with the clawed staple remover I'd acquired. Thank God for my piano fingers. I don't think I could have squeezed hard enough to tear his gullet completely from his throat, though the staple remover broke in half from the pressure. Kobe! The claws went flying, finding a home in Larissa's right eye. Painfully unfunny, no tickling my tummy, hollered a voice like maggots dissolving in acid. It only served to fuel me as one by one I decommissioned my ape-mode co-workers, and all the while Skunk watched on, looking happy as a dog with two dicks. Well, a lot more than two in this case. Jarvis came scrabbling towards me, only to be met by an uncapped metal chair leg through his bark, while I pivoted the chair up again to catch Wyatt mid-leap with one leg through the jaw and another through his nods. Oof. My hand guided an open stapler into the young intern's stomach. I only realised how useless that was upon receiving an elbow to the cheek. Finn, the last ex-human standing, wobbled in a daze and tried to catch his bearings. Right when his senses returned, I stole them away just as quickly with a wall clock frisbee to the temple, caving it in. With my last acolyte, in the order of Skunk put down, I rotated towards the mutt himself and fixed him with my gaze. You're one sick puppy, huh, Skunk? Look at you now! Tail between your legs. The dumb bastard started to cry. Now that made my day. I burst out into howling laughter, holding up a hand and wiping away tears before getting back to business. I narrowed my eyes and shot Skunk what I hoped was a terribly devious smirk, and then bent down over Finn's body. He still had breath in him, apparently, because when I tore out his tibia, I heard a soft but distinct, "My leg!" With fresh bait in my hand, I began pacing towards Skunk. I could see him trying to fight the urge, groaning and hurling obscenities, so profoundly shocking I won't be repeating them here. He put up a fight, but caved when I held the bone. He barreled straight for it. At the same time, I bounded up onto a stray desk, and with precise aim threw myself onto him with a diving elbow drop, connecting with his bark and breaking it on impact. What a delight! Oh, great balls of fire! I glared down at Skunk's body, battered, ruined, though he never lost those venomous eyes. I did notice, however, that at this point, his body barely resembled anything canine. Some lanky, bony thing, draped in loose skin, with the hue and texture of the blanket of mould in a cup of tea left on the windowsill for 2 months. Way she goes, Skunk! Fucking way she goes! He shouted. He whined. He barked and yelped. But it was no use. I looked around for my chosen mode of execution, and my eyes landed on a newly emptied paper shredder. I beamed and chuckled. You're in the doghouse now. I don't need to detail the process. Safe to say, I could have sealed what remained of Skunk in beef mince pockets, and none would be any the wiser. Well, now I'm left with a buffet of gore and naked bodies. I don't see this turning out well for me, but I'd rather be locked up than spend another minute in a world where Skunk exists. Even if my paycheck's gone to the dogs, I've slipped the collar, and I'm dog-tired. But, for the first time being, I have enough to keep the wolf from the door.